Palmer from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dodaro, good to see you again. You and I have done a lot of work on some key issues, particularly in the high-risk area, and I just want to know, it's been very frustrating, the lack of response in some cases, and I just want to know if there's some common themes or patterns that you have noticed across high-risk areas when compiling the list in recent years.
Yes, one thing is the programs that rely upon state and local administrations are among the most difficult to deal with. This would be Medicaid, unemployment insurance program, because we allow the states to design their own programs within certain parameters. So it's very difficult, and a lot of the federal agencies have a little bit of a softer posture in terms of oversight when there's a lot of responsibilities delegated to the state and local government, but you really need federal leadership in a more aggressive manner. So that's number one. Number two is I think there needs to be more resources brought to bear and more disciplined management of federal programs and activities on spending in normal programs, but on emergencies, which we've have had and will continue to have. And that's the basis for the 10 legislative suggestions I put before the Congress.
Well, in regard to the emergency, it raises a question about the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Has that worsened our ability to manage vulnerable funds? And you mentioned one of them, the unemployment insurance fraud that took place on a massive scale.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, the pandemic exposed fundamental management weaknesses that the federal government has in the payment process in normal times. Mm-hmm. One is the emphasis has been on pay and chase in the fraud area, rather than preventing fraud in the first place. I've tried to change that, working with the Congress and the agencies. We're nowhere near where we need to be in preventing fraud in the first place.
Well, that's some of the stuff that you and I have worked on over the years is how do we incentivize federal agencies to prevent the improper payments that I think you're really talking about right now, the pay and chase. And I think one of the things that GAO pointed out was that so much of that is just failure to verify eligibility on things, right. Poor paperwork, just administrative errors, but also antiquated data systems.
Right.
And I'm still interested in pursuing a way to incentivize agencies rather than punish agencies that don't pursue this. But what is the GAO's current estimate of improper payments?
The government-wide estimates based on what the agencies have done for the last fiscal year was $247 billion. The previous year was $280 billion. But as I mentioned to the chairman, those estimates aren't complete. So I think the number is much higher.
So, okay, you estimate it's much higher. Let's just say it's between 250 and 300 billion per year. Just at a static level, we're talking over a 10-year period, $2.5 to $3 trillion. And what people need to understand about this is $2.5 to $3 trillion over 10 years that we're having to borrow and pay interest on. And when we're trying to deal with the debt limit and trying to get our fiscal house in order, recognizing the enormous impact it's going to have on our capital markets, that's a pretty significant number. That's a pretty big hill that we need to climb. And I'd like for the committee to continue to work with the GAO to come up with a way to incentivize federal agencies to address this issue. I think one place that we could start, Mr. Chairman, is on updating the antiquated data systems, because part of the problem I think, Mr. Dodaro, you and I ran into was the lack of ability for interface between data systems between state and federal government. So I think we've got some real opportunities here. I have some other questions I may submit in writing relative to some of the things that my Democrat colleagues have said that I want to evaluate a little bit deeper. But I do think that we don't pay enough attention to how much money is going out of the Treasury in improper payments, and we're doing pay and chase rather than prevention. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.